Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 393 of How Do You Write? I'm Rachael Herron. So thrilled that you are here with me today as I'm speaking to Uzma Jalaluddin, who was absolutely delightful. You are going to love this interview. We talk about reclaiming your brain from social media and a whole lot more. Stick around. She is a new friend, and this is a great interview. What's been going on around here? Well, just a lot of writing, a lot of nano writing. Been writing that book on being kind to yourself as a writer. And I must say, I found a fantastic use case for AI. I asked people, writers who were on my mailing list, to tell me the things that they struggle with most so that I can make sure I don't miss the big things that I want to be in this book. I asked about emotions and fears and struggles and joys. And I got a lot of responses. And I got so many responses that I got a little bit overwhelmed. And I thought, how am I going to parse all of this information? I can read each answer, which of course I did and I do. But then my brain, loses track of, did this answer sound like that answer? What's the difference between her answer and his answer? And so I'm asking ChatGPT to do an analysis on these answers to collate and list out very clearly what is said, but in kind of like a bullet pointed, organized way, because the way those kind of questionnaires come in, they're not organized in any way, shape, or fashion. And I could do that, but it would take a long time. And ChatGPT just did this. I will say that ChatGPT sometimes doesn't listen, even though I say, here's the list to analyze. It gave me a list of things that just seemed really generic. And I said, after I got that answer, I said, did you get that from the list? And ChatGPT, I don't know if you've had this experience, but says, oh, my bad. Sorry. No, I just thought you wanted a generic answer. Here's what I'm going to do from looking at the list. So, and then you can cross reference against it to make sure that it is pulling from the data that you gave it to get the information that you want. But for me, it was such an easy, fast way of making sure that all voices are heard and that I get to see everything. Oh, yeah. Again, I'm reading everything on the forms, but then that my brain isn't dropping pieces that I don't want to drop, which is really cool. I was just playing with that this morning in between writing sessions. I'm about to go into another writing session with a group of NaNoWriMo writers that I have been playing with over in the Slack channel. You can always join the Slack channel, y'all. You can come play. If you're doing nano, you can come join my Slack channel for free. If you're not doing nano, there's a lot of chat over there about writing. And the link is always in the show notes. So you can just go there and go to my Slack channel and hang out with us. It's really cool. Please do that. Other than that, I've just had some health things this week. All went well. And I just have to say that I love New Zealand because I was able to get the almost impossible and very expensive medicine that I need in order to have other medical procedures done. I have this weird genetic condition which makes my body overreact to things in a life-threatening way. And I was never, ever able to get the treatment I needed in the States because the condition was so not understood. It's still not understood here. Nobody has this, but there are a couple of people who understand it and they can get me the help I need. And it was great to, I'm not being cagey on purpose. I had a colonoscopy, just a routine colonoscopy, but that's the kind of thing that can kill me if I don't get the medicine I need beforehand. So all is well. And that's why I'm not talking about it too much, but it was not fun. It was a couple of days with the pre-treatment and then the treatment of not that much fun. And I still got some writing done. That's what I love about nano, is that nano challenges us to get words. Here's the thing that I've been talking with over in the Slack, talking with my nano writers about and with in Slack. NaNoWriMo reminds me of one of the most important things that I need to do for my own writing self. I need to remember that in my first draft, I am only getting words. And if I give myself a word count and I am physically able to move my fingers and sit up at a desk, then I will always hit that goal. It is always doable. It is always gettable. And that is always gettable and doable for you. So if you set yourself a goal of 1,000 words, if you're doing it the NaNoWriMo way, at any time of the year, you will get your words. Because here's the thing, NaNoWriMo does not care about quality at all. At all, at all. And I think I blew a couple of people's minds over in the Slack when I showed them what I was writing, which is basically I was writing about Ira Glass's theory of the gap, which I love. And I put on the page, because I wasn't able to, I had locked myself into this program I love called Cold Turkey Writer, so I couldn't go check anything. And I paraphrased his quote, but then I just had fun with it. I'm like, Ira Glass says this. You probably didn't say it that way, but I'm going to make this up and I'm going to do this later. And Rachel, you're doing great. Keep going. Make up this quote. Yay. I have no idea what I'm writing now. Okay, onward. Where was I? Those words count. Those are words that count toward your 1,000 words for the day, or your 2,000 words for the day, or whatever your personal goal is. We slow down and we stop getting words when we worry about quality. And the worry about quality, of course, comes up every few seconds. And getting used to producing a quantity of words, not quality of words, is what allows us to get more words on the page, and then allows us to find the actual beautiful stuff in there. The other day, while I was doing some of the medical stuff, I decided to write, and I was just in a terrible headspace, but I wanted to get some words. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and I wrote just garbage. And then about 10 or 15 minutes into the writing exercise, where I was just trying to get words, they did not make sense. I changed directions every few sentences. I expressed frustration on the page, including sentences that were like, what am I doing? What am I even trying to say? You've got this. Keep going. Those words count. That counts toward my word count. Here's why: because 10 or 15 minutes in, the idea came that I hadn't seen coming, that I was not going to include, and then I wrote, and I had so much fun for the rest of my time. And I never would have found that if I had just allowed myself to get up and move away. All I was trying to do was get words. Any words, terrible words, without thought of quality. Again, as soon as I start to think about quality, I get tight, and I might get 100 words or 200 words, and then it's just too hard, and then I got to walk away. So if you, no matter whether you're doing nano or not, try doing some writing with literally zero regard for quality. That's where the magic comes in, and that's how books get done. All right, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. I want to also tell you about Uzma here. Uzma Jalaluddin is the author of Ayesha at Last and Hannah Khan Carries On. A high school teacher, she is also a Toronto Star columnist and a contributor to The Atlantic. Her first novel was optioned for film by Pascal Pictures, and her second novel was optioned for film by Kaling International and Amazon Studios. She lives in Toronto, and Much Ado About Nada is her most recent release. Please enjoy this fabulous interview with Uzma, and I will talk to you soon. Get some of your own writing done, and then come tell me about it. I would love to hear. Here we go. All right. Well, I am so pleased to welcome you to the show. Would you please share your name and your pronouns with us?
Sure. My name is Uzma Jalaluddin, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Uzma, it's such a pleasure to have you. And we were just bonding over the fact that you were just in New Zealand, and actually
Yeah.
probably I might have been in the States while you were here. I was gone for a couple of weeks in August, but I'm very glad that you enjoyed this
Oh, I
country.
love New Zealand. I want to go back. People are so friendly, and
Well, now
the
you
views are just stunning.
and now you have a friend in Wellington. So
That's right.
come back. All right. So on this show, we talk about writing process, which is always a kind of thing that I want to jump to and talk to all writers about. And you are prolific and you get stuff done. Can you please tell me how you get your writing done? How does it happen? What's your writing
It's
process?
it's funny you should say that because I don't consider myself prolific at all. Like sometimes
No.
I no because so my first three novels, actually my first four novels, and I've only written four, so don't audience don't get excited. They're all romance, and I feel like in this particular genre, I write specifically romantic comedies, but in romance in particular, I feel like people write really fast. Like
Yeah, that's
they'll
true.
write two books a year, three books a year, and I'm coming up with a book every 2 years if I'm lucky. Though this past year, 2022, 2023 has been a bit of a banner year. I've released two books in 2023. So I guess I'm getting a little faster.
Yeah. And you're with Berkeley,
Yeah.
is that right? Who?
Well, I'm with a whole bunch of different people. So my books are primarily they're published in by HarperCollins Canada in Canada, and it by Berkeley in the US, and by Atlantic in the UK, and Corvus in New Zealand, and yeah, just a whole bunch of different publishers, and of course the translations.
So for
My
people listening
Mhm.
who are new to this and might not understand that, I just want to say props to your agent for keeping world rights, because what you were then able to do is to sell your books into different countries to
No,
different publishers. No,
I
not like
wish.
that.
No. So
Oh,
what
darn it.
happened was this actually goes back to 2017 when I was trying to publish my very first novel, I Shot Last. And it was a very different time in publishing. I think it was a very different time in the world. But specifically in publishing, that was when we need more diverse books. Hashtag own voices, all of those movements were kind of like really taking up the banner for greater diversity across all lines in publishing. But it was still like the movement was still in its infancy. So people were kind of like still in the talking about it, but not really doing anything about it, in my opinion. Or they
I
were
think
just
there's
kind of
still
on the
quite a
cusp,
bit there too. But yeah.
the cusp of that. So my agent tried hard to interest. First, I'm Canadian, but my agent is American, so she tried hard to interest an American publisher, and I got the required number of rejections that every writer has to get used to, because writing is all about being rejected and then trying again. And then we were contacted by basically HarperCollins Canada, threw their hat in the ring and really fell in love. My editor there, Jennifer Lambert, is fantastic, and she put an offer in, and so they actually had world rights. So because Canada is a pretty small territory, what they do is that they then partner, and they turn
Got
around
it.
and they kind of serve as the agent and sell rights. So they sold the rights to Berkeley, they sold the rights to, and of course
Mhm.
I they take a bit of a cut, but I keep most of it, but not
Yes.
in money. It goes against my advance. So it's kind of all complicated, weird publishing accounting, which like would not make sense to anyone outside of publishing.
But I think you explained that really, really clearly. I've had both things happen, and most recently with Penguin, and it always really makes me feel so funny when I'm with Penguin US, but not Penguin UK, but I'm published with Penguin UK because they sold it to Penguin UK, but we didn't see any money, but it went against the royalties. So if that is
Yeah.
confusing to anyone listening, it's okay.
Yeah.
Publishing accounting is a mystery to
Yeah.
many of us. Um,
And then my fourth novel is actually co-written, and it's coming out in the US and Canada actually in a couple of weeks. So it's a co-written multi-faith holiday rom-com. I wrote it with Marissa Stapley, and that was directly sold to Penguin, and
and
they
what is the
world
title of
rights.
that?
It's called Three Holidays and a Wedding.
I love that. Who is your editor
Thank you.
there?
Tara Singh Carlson.
I don't know. Okay, that's cool. All right. Well, I will try to coincide this podcast release with the release of that. Yay, holiday
Thank
stories
you.
coming. I love that. Okay, so going back to the question, where and how do you write? Where does it happen? How does it happen?
Well, it happens right here, actually. This is my office in my basement. My earlier when I was first starting out, I would write all over the place. I didn't really have like a designated writing space, and I think that was just a function of like having young children and kind of always being on the go. Because in addition to being a writer, I'm also a high school teacher, so I would write in coffee shops on my way home from work. I'd stop off at like our Canadian popular Canadian chain is called Second Cup. It's like the Starbucks.
Mm.
I would stop off there and write, or I'd go to libraries and write, or when my kids were like taking some kind of a class, a fitness class or a recreation class, I'd be the parent who wouldn't pay attention to what their kid was doing and just be like typing away.
Someone will let you
There,
know that if they need you.
yeah, yeah, they knew the drill. And then as I kind of progressed, and then what happens as you start writing a lot is that your eyes just deteriorate. Okay, so you need to invest in some quality sunglasses, so quality glasses. So I have like my readers and my progressives, and it's just
I've got,
it,
yes, that all over the
it
desk. I've
happened way
got the
too.
different, yeah.
Yeah, it happened way too soon. So I needed a big monitor, and I needed like the ergonomic keyboard, because when you start writing tens of thousands of words in a really short amount of time, your wrists start to go. So
Yeah.
it was really important to get all of that. So I set up shop we live in a small house in a suburb outside of Toronto, and we set up shop in my basement office, and it's a small space. Can't see it, but I have my bookcase over there. I've got a bulletin board with some ideas up there. Behind me, I share the office with my husband's computer, so it's not a very nice view, but it works.
So now when you've got the kids and you've got the teaching, when do you fit that in? Are you an early morning writer or do you write at night when everybody's quieter? How do you manage that?
I'm a needs must writer. So I feel
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of I don't know, maybe I shouldn't speak for everyone, but for me, like writing is kind of an itch that I need to scratch. And it depending on where I am in the writing, drafting, revision process, that itch will be very, very strong and it'll pull me out of bed at 5 in the morning, even though I'm not a morning person, despite being a teacher, not a good trait. And I will, spend the first hour of my day basically drafting or whatever. But for the most part, I find mornings are very stressful because I have to get out as a teacher. I have to get out on the road quite early in order to make it to class on time because my school starts early. I have to get the kids out the door, and my husband helps as well. So I tend to be a bit of a in the past year at least. I started writing a lot at night. So after everyone was kind of done, kind of
Mhm.
settled, everyone dinner. We had eaten dinner. We were good. I would disappear into the basement and write from 8 to 12, 8 to 11 and and then sometimes in the afternoons if I could, after I came home from school, and if I wasn't, my husband and I will trade off cooking duty. So if I'm not cooking that night, I'll put in an hour or so. So it still is kind of like a bit of a patchwork quilt of that. And of course, as a teacher, I get school holidays off. So my summers, I always joke that I take the our Canada Day is July 1st. So the school year runs from September to June. I'll take the July 1st long weekend off, and then I work every day until I go back to school. Uh,
Yeah. That's nice. That's a nice system.
yeah, yeah. Actually, it is nice because teaching is exhausting
Yeah.
and you actually need some time to recover from the burnout of every single school year. So what happened was I just pushed that off and I worked straight through 3 summers, and I actually burned out a little bit. So
Mm.
it wasn't good. And I worked through Christmas holidays, the spring break, all of that. But that's what you have to do when you're juggling multiple careers, right? So
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. And teachers especially, oh my gosh. Teachers always say, "Well, I get the holidays, I got the school holidays," but you work so much while school is in session. You work
Yep.
so bloody much.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you never
amazing.
really it's kind of like being a writer, you don't really turn
Yeah.
it off, like my
Yeah.
teacher brain when, I would be listening to a song lyric and being like, "Oh, that reminds me of this Shakespearean play that I'm talking about in my class," or I would watch a movie and be like, "That's giving me Macbeth vibes. I'm going to bring that up in my classroom as well." And, you come across like, I don't know, some kind of software or whatever. Like it's all like just like with the writing ideas, your brain's always churning.
Always cross-pollinating. Yeah.
Mhm.
So what is your biggest challenge when it comes to writing?
For me, it's plotting and kind of taking the time to really think through my idea. I think I have the tendency to be a pantser, and for listeners who don't know what that means, it's flying by the seat of your pants and not actually, outlining your book. And there are two kind of quasi frenemy camps in the writing world. Though most of us are a bit of both. I think my natural tendency is to be a pantser because I'm always just so excited when I have the germ of an idea to just leap into it and explore it and write. But what I've discovered after becoming a published writer is when I do that, I spend a lot of time kind of in the woods, and that doesn't work very well when you have a deadline. So it saves me so much time, but it's kind of like I'm raring to go and I'm doing it right now actually. I'm raring to go, but I have to hold myself back and say, "No, you have to figure out what happens in the story, at least the broad beats of it before
Yeah.
you dive in."
Because
And I know writers don't do that, and they think it's boring because you already know what the story is. But I feel like the more books I've written, I feel like I have to outline somewhat before I get started. So I find it really hard. Like I hate that part of it, but I
me
need to do
too. We are exactly the same in that. And I love that you called it frenemies. I always think of it as a spectrum from plotting to
Yeah.
pantsing, and they are frenemies. Someday I want it to be friends to lovers. I want like my pantsing soul to meet my plotting brain and like fall in love with each other, but it has not happened yet. They're still barely thinly veiled frenemies.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
agreed, agreed.
What
And
is
the
your
funny thing,
yeah.
I was going to say, the funny thing about that is that even though I outline and I feel like I know the story, I'm very eager to like throw it in the trash and just kind of,
Oh, yes.
follow it as when I'm drafting. I just kind of go off on tangents. So that's my tragic flaw as a writer.
But there was the
At least
thinking
in
that
my
you
downfall.
did to figure out those major plot points. that got you to the place where you could veer off course, and now you can do some more thinking and readjust, and I just think it's not none of that is ever
Yes.
wasted, but
Yes.
it can be frustrating. What is your
Very
biggest
true.
joy when it comes to writing?
I actually really enjoy revising. I
Me
know that's an
too.
unpopular opinion. Really? Oh my
Oh, it's
God,
the
we're the same
best.
person.
It's the we are the same person. It is my happy place. I hate first drafts and I love revision. The first Do you feel this like this when you're starting a revision that first day? Like you sit down
Yeah.
and you go, "It's here."
I think I just enjoy the magic of like, okay, I don't have to come up with the ideas anymore because they're here. And even if I'm going to throw the idea out, at least I have some words down on paper. And now I get to actually just do the fun part of being like, well, that character would be better served earlier. I need to push this forward and move this, and I can get rid of this entire plot line entirely. And I just love it. Like I get really like scientific about it. Like I'll like I'll make kind of like a board full of like cue cards with every chapter is on a cue card, and it's color coordinated, and this one follows the character arc, and this one follows the conflict arc for this character and that character. And I just turn into a total nerd about it, I guess, because I get to like geek out over stationery and things like that, different colors, different highlighters, different post-it notes.
Post-its, yes.
Yeah, and then I really enjoyed that part of it. And then in the end you get to see how, you took like a first draft, which is always very rough, like a rough diamond, and then you just polish it up and polish it up, and it turns into this, hopefully, something that really gleams.
And it's always such a surprising, million miles away from what it was, or at least in my case,
Yeah,
it's like,
always,
"How did I
always. I
do
always
that?"
it always ends up so much stronger than
Yeah,
when, we started off.
that's gorgeous. Can you share a craft tip of any sort with us?
Um, yeah, so one of the things that I do when I'm revising, which is something, that has kind of helped me, is just, like I said, like following the different arcs of the characters and doing that in a really visual way. Because I think when you're writing and you're just seeing words on the page, um, I do like to kind of boil down my story and basically put like write down or put it on a computer screen or whatever, the summary of every single chapter. So this is what happens. And then I arrange it on my bulletin board, and then I kind of stare at it. And then when I see it boil down like that, I can kind of move things around and see where they really belong. And if you color code it, as I said, for, this is what happens with this character and this is what happens with that character, I find it really helps you get to the essence of like the themes that you're trying to explore, and make sure that you're really, yeah, finishing the arc of that character development or that plot. It's a really good way of seeing like a big project, like a book, which can be so daunting when you get to like past the 100,000 word mark, and
Yes.
make it into like just put it on like a big book, a bulletin board or a poster board or what. I did this once on the door, like my closet door once, just a bunch of post-it notes, and it was just really nice to see the book kind of distilled to its parts. So
It
that would be my revision tip.
I love that. It feels so good to be able to have that overview, and it makes me sad for writers who wrote before Post-it notes and colored index cards because they are so incredibly satisfying. Thank you
Exactly.
for
Agreed.
that. What is the kindest thing that anyone's ever done for you in your writing career?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and I think one of the kindest things that someone did for me is someone who has now become like a very close writer friend. When I had probably my I don't know, my 20th or 15th draft of Aisha at last, which was to become my first published novel, I had met I had met her through a mutual friend. Her name is Asma Zahanat Khan. She's also a writer, except she writes crime and fantasy. She's a fantastic author. I had met her through a mutual friend, and I didn't know a lot of published authors at the time. And so she was very kind. We hit it off, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be brave and ask her if she has, this wasn't like a cold call. Like I had known her at some point, but I asked her if she would be interested in reading my book or reading parts of my book and giving me some feedback. And we were friendly, but we weren't like extremely good friends. And in hindsight, I know that this is something that you shouldn't really ask authors, but we were friends.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And in my community there's not a lot of published authors, so I think we were
yeah,
just excited to meet, another Canadian Muslim South Asian writer.
yeah.
Anyways, I asked her to read my book, and she just went above and beyond. She read my book, and she sent back this like 3 or 4 page, just like gushing about how much she loved it and how much it meant to her
Oh,
personally. I was writing this in 2016, which was like kind of a tough time in the
it
US,
was a
if you
hard
remember.
year. Yeah.
And and I wrote a very joyful, loving, romantic comedy about observant Muslims, which I think was really unique in the marketplace. And as a similar observant Muslim, she was like, I really needed this. I needed this right now. And it meant so much to me. And she also gave me excellent feedback and criticism in an extremely gentle and kind way. And I found I actually loved that email so much. I printed it out and I used it as kind of like a semi-editorial letter. And I took a picture and I sent it to her. And I was like, I don't know if you remember this, but in December 2016, I actually think you're one of the reasons why I'm a writer right now, because you took the time to do this extreme kindness. And which, as a published author, people approach me all the time. And I know how hard it is to like commit to reading someone else's work when you're already so busy. But she's just an incredibly generous and kind person. And I hope all good things come her way.
What did she say when you reminded her of it?
She was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
But to you, it was the difference between you being a writer and a non-writer. Like, I am sure that that letter produced fuel for you on the days where you didn't know if you could do it, if you could keep moving forward, right? Because she
I
had said
think,
those
yeah,
things.
I think I was pretty determined. And I think what it did was it made me realize that the book that I had been working on, that I've been working on at that point for about 8 years, like it was a long haul for me. No, sorry, at that point it was probably 6 years. That she believed that I had what it would take to kind of, try to get it published.
That's awesome.
And she was a virtual stranger if she'd really hated it. I think because we didn't know each other. We were in a we were friendly acquaintances, I would say, at that
Right.
point. I think she would have kindly said it needed more work, or you should focus on this,
Good
but
luck
instead it
with
was just,
that. Right.
yeah, yeah, because I when people ask me for feedback, and if I really don't like something, I always try to be like, I love this, but I think you need to work on this.
Yes.
And she was very kind, and she was kind of like, you're a writer, that's what you need to do. And it meant so much at the time. It was a thing I needed to hear at that moment.
I often mention this, but there was an editor that I was friendly with, traditional editor, and we were friends through the knitting community. And she had seen something I'd written, and she wrote an email to me through this knitting website that said, "You will be published." And I just
Oh,
remember
that's so
thinking, like,
nice.
"Oh, that was those words. I still just ring in my head." Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what
Yeah.
is the kindest thing you've ever done for yourself as a writer?
I think one of the things that I started doing recently in the past year in particular is to delete social media from my phone. So I'll go
Hell
through
yes.
periods. Yeah,
Yes.
I'll go through periods where I will just be like, nope, I'm done with Instagram for a while, and I will take it off my phone. And I think for about 6 months last year, which wasn't good for my DMs, because a lot of people try to get in touch with me through my DMs. I was like, this is not. It was still on my desktop. I mean, you can't really do anything much with
Right.
Instagram on your desktop, but it was still there. And same with Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called now. I deleted both off my phone, and I instantly just felt better, because I think in our industry as writers, like your people are constantly posting, and you don't know what's real and what's fake. And there's always some kind of scandal or drama that's happening. And there's also a real sense of like, how well am I doing compared to other writers, which I think can distract you from the actual work of writing. Because as much as writers want to write, we also just want to be distracted all the time, like everyone else.
Yes. Yes. It feels
So
good.
that was, yeah, that was one of the kind things I think that I did for myself. And I mean, it helps that I grew up kind of, straddling pre-internet and post-internet, and I was like, I'm kind of that millennial age, so I still get that, but I think it's really easy to get sucked into the social media madness, and
Mhm.
I'm glad I did that for months at a time.
I have been in a month at a time for a timeout recently for TikTok, which I needed to get off my phone. And I have a pretty healthy relationship with everything else, in that I don't really look at it at all ever. But I will tell you, if you ever need an Instagram break again, you can set up an autoresponder for DMs, which I could not
Oh.
figure out how to do. You've got to go through Facebook to do it, and I had my assistant do it for me. And my wife absolutely hates it because she likes to send me, funny things on Instagram, and she always gets the autoresponder that says, "I'm sorry, I'm on a social media break, blah blah." But it's there, and that really made me feel less guilty, because I do get reached out to a lot on Instagram as well. And
Yeah.
then yeah, okay, that's
I actually
wonderful.
get a lot of DMs on Twitter, on not so much on Twitter, but on definitely on Instagram. And then I also get a lot of emails, just like whether they're emails about, can you come and do this event, or can you, I loved your book and I read it. And And I used to be really good and diligent about answering all the emails, but I don't have an assistant. And unfortunately, it's like between parenting, making time for myself, being a high school teacher, and then trying to write books. And I actually recently wrote a play that was in
Cool.
production.
Oh, that's amazing.
I thank you. I got really bad about responding to people, and I felt terrible because I know how much it means when, like, whenever I reach out to
Yes.
authors that I'm fangirling over, that I'm like, it's so amazing when they write back. But I was like, I'm not going to give myself a hard time about this. If I can, I'll go back and answer months old emails. But sometimes I'm just not going to get to the email. And for anyone who has tried to email me, whoever's listening to this, I'm really sorry. I read it and I loved what you said. I'm trying to work on just living a more balanced life. That's all.
We are the same person, I believe. I have this incredible autoresponder on my email, which says basically, I love you so much. And here's some ways, that you can look into what I'm doing. But also, if you've sent me a nice email, it has touched me to the bottom of my heart and soul, and I will respond someday, but that may be in 6 months from now. And I have a practice of always responding to every email I get with a like, thank you so much. That meant so much. Like eventually I will respond personally, but that takes all responsibility and guilt off my shoulders because it'll be
That's
as long as it
nice. Yeah.
takes for me to get through it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I should probably do that. I used to have a column that I wrote for the Toronto Star, which is
Ooh,
Canada's largest paper, and
yeah.
it was a biweekly column I wrote about. It was like a funny column about my life, about being a parent to,
You
well,
must have
now they're
gotten
teenage.
so much mail.
I got so much mail every week, every time there was a column, and depending on, sometimes the columns were a little bit more, scandalous, a little bit more my God, what's the word? I can't think of the
Controversial.
word.
Yes.
That's it.
It's late your time.
And other times they weren't, and I used to respond all the time because I was so excited, but then there was just a deluge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I try to be good about it, but I'm also not going to give myself a hard time about,
Good.
you know, not.
Good. I love that. May I ask you, what is the best book that you read recently? And why did you love it?
So I have a couple of different answers for this. I've
Oh,
been
good.
trying to read a lot more. I really loved this book by, God, the title is "This Is How You Lose the Time War," and
I
it's a novella.
loved that
Yeah,
book.
I'm sure you've heard of it.
Oh.
Amal El Motar, and she's actually from Ottawa. I didn't realize that,
Oh,
which
I
is so
didn't know
cool.
that.
Yeah, and Max Gladstone, and I think he's
Yeah.
American. So Canadian and American got together and wrote. It's a novella. It's kind of, I think it's straddling a little bit short novel, which is a novella, but it's a little bit longer than a novella. It's over 200 pages. But it's just so beautiful. I mean, I kept hearing about it everywhere, and I was like, okay, it's on my TBR. And I finally had some time to read it, and it's just, you can tell that Amal is definitely a poet, because I looked her up,
Mm.
and I don't know if Max is as well, but the the fantastical backdrop of this, like, dystopian kind of time war that's being fought between these two secret agents who seem to be just like amazing killers, but also capable of writing such exquisite love letters to each other.
I get
As
goosebumps
a
thinking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a romance writer, it was just like that. Like, every line would make me stop and be like, "Oh my God, I can't take this anymore."
Maybe that's why it was a novella, because they knew he wouldn't survive.
It was gorgeous. I really, really enjoyed it. And then I'm having a little bit of a sci-fi kick. I also listened to the audiobook of the Murderbot books by Martha Wells. So
I've
I think
heard
it's book number 3 or 4. I can't remember. It's called
I've
Rogue
heard such good
Protocol.
things.
Yeah, also novellas. So I guess I'm
Yeah.
also on a novella kick, and I listened to the audiobook of that. And if you haven't picked up Martha Wells, everyone just nicknames the series a Murderbot series. It's a very voicey, funny series about this, like, just super annoyed AI sentient being who just thinks humans are just idiots, and then keeps getting pulled into, like, trying to save all the humans around him, even though he hates everybody. And it's so funny to me to read the series as writers living in the age of AI, when we're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, AI is coming for all of our creative jobs. When really, if AI ever actually became anything more than what it is, which is like a glorified Google, I know I shouldn't say that, and I probably don't understand what AI is, but at this point, they're, you know, But if AI ever really gained the kind of sentience that Martha Wells is talking about, this is what they would want to do. They would just want to watch content and be left alone by everyone, like the rest of us. And I think it's hilarious. It's a great metaphor for what's going on in the world right now. So I highly recommend that one too.
Have you, speaking of novellas and AI and robots and things, have you read the Monk and Robot series by Becky Chambers?
I haven't.
Oh, no,
Oh, should I?
today. Oh, there's two
Okay.
novellas in it so far. If you
Okay.
just Google Becky Chambers, Monk and Robot, those are, I think, I can't remember the name of the first or the second book. They're beautiful titles, and they are short stories about a tea monk who meets a robot far off in the future, and they wander around having a friendship, and it's comfort. It's just pure comfort.
Ooh.
But things actually
Okay.
happen. I think you'll really, really, really love them.
Okay.
I cannot wait for the third.
The author again, Rebecca
Becky Chambers,
Becky Chambers. Okay, I'm gonna look it up.
Monk
Thank you.
and Robot. Oh, oh, you'll thank me. You'll
Okay.
thank me. I know you will.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay, can you please tell us about your most recent book, and let's go with the one that's coming out soon. Tell us a little bit
Sure.
about
I
it.
actually I so my two books came out in close proximity, so if you don't mind, I'll
Tell me
mention
both.
both.
Yes.
The book that I wrote on my own is called Much Ado About Nada. And it's, of course, a play on the Shakespearean play Much Ado About Nothing, but it is actually a second chance romance inspired by Jane Austen's Persuasion. And the main character's name is Nada, which is a popular name in a whole bunch of different cultures, actually.
Hmm.
And it's just really angsty and romantic. And then my book that's coming out in Canada on October 3rd, and I think in the United States and elsewhere around the world at the end of September, September 26th and the 28th, is called Three Holidays and a Wedding. I wrote it with the Toronto-based writer Marissa Stapley, and it's set in the year 2000, when this is a real thing that happened, when the Muslim month of Ramadan, Hanukkah, and Christmas all happened in December. And it's basically, think of every single Hollywood and Hollywood holiday rom-com slash Hallmark movie rom-com that's set in Christmas. It all happens in our book, except it's about the three faiths instead of just the one.
I love that. I will be absolutely picking that up. Where
Thank
can we
you.
find you out there on the interwebs?
Lately I've
Instagram?
been, yeah, Instagram. It's at Uzma Jalaluddin, my first name, last name. I'm on Twitter at Uzma Writes, and you can always email me. I'm at ujalaluddin at outlook.com or uzmajwrites at gmail.com.
And it may take us a minute to get back to you, but that's okay.
But I read everything.
Have patience. She
So
reads
it just
everything.
takes me a while.
Thank you so much for being here. It was an absolute delight to have you on the show today.
Likewise. Thank you so much. This was so fun.